Hello, my grots and gits, and welcome back to Happy Corrupt and Wargaming. As promised, today is part 2. Yesterday, we went over a lot of the weaknesses of orcs and how we really need to mitigate them in order to perform really well in this meta and to crump our foes like it's no one's business. So today, we got to talk about the strengths, and then we're going to talk about how to really maximize our strengths. This is a really important conversation because one of the things that I find people do with orcs is we get like the best models or we get the best units and we put them on the table and then we're like, I just got shot to pieces. It doesn't matter if I have the best models, if I have the best units, if I just get to shot to pieces. So we have to really learn how to mitigate all of our weaknesses and how to really maximize all of our strengths. So that's what we're doing in this little video series. I've actually got another series that's coming up next, which is some of like the thought process on auto include units, which I don't necessarily believe there is a concept of an auto include unit. Like I can build a orc list without anything and it's going to be a pretty good list. I can drop literally any unit in the codex and it's still going to be a good codex. Could be a good army. I don't need grots, although I mean, it's pretty hard to argue why you wouldn't include those 40 points. But hey, I don't need grots. I don't need gas. I don't need a war boss. Like I can make a good functional. I'm getting off on a diatribe. Let's get into the strengths of orcs and how we're really going to maximize them. So, what are the strengths that our army really has? Well, we have very high OC. The OC score is a stat that orcs have in bukus. Our Gretchen for 40 points give us 21 OC because when we include that little runt herd in there as well. We have when a unit of orc boys, it's going to drop us for 20 OC for 85 points. We have a unit of beast snaggers that's going to give us 20 OC for 105 points. The amount of OC our army can pump out is absolutely insane. And that is just completely wild. Remember, guys, the way that we win Warhammer is we win by victory points. We don't have to kill our opponents. I've got people who still talk about how difficult it is for orcs to beat custodes, and I just, this doesn't compute for me. Now, it does help because I'm a custodes player as well, so I kind of understand the weaknesses and the strengths of all these armies, but that's why I'm trying to impart this to you. For example, you can have a 400-point unit where you have a leader who has an enhancement and a unit of 5 wardens, and they're standing on an objective, and you're like, crap, how am I ever going to kill that? Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't even have to kill that unit. Take a 40-point unit of Gretchen, advance them onto the objective with the wardens, and just stand there. The second you do that, he scores a 0 primary. 0. And your 40-point unit of Gretchen has outcunned a 400-point unit of Custodes. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that we have access to very high OC. That is a really big deal. All right. Then we also have an exceptionally powerful go turn. Remember, every army in the game has a go turn. Well, effectively, every single army in the game has a go turn. I'm sure you can come up with some list build that's designed to not have one, but that's okay. Our go turn is just more verbal because we have a amazing mechanism called the waaagh, and it's really powerful. So that's going to give us the ability to hit really hard. It's going to get us the ability to get across the map in a turn, and it gets us into positions that our opponent is not really prepared to have us in. There are inherent weaknesses associated with the waaagh as well, and I think I'm going to talk about that when I'm talking about how to maximize our strengths, okay? Next, we have a very extremely super high volume of anti-infantry and anti-elite infantry troops. Just our normal infantry squad units, take a beast snagaboy, is actually pretty good into a lot of elite infantry squads. like our normal infantry is actually still good into a lot of elite infantry, which is kind of wild to think about that, right? So that's just, it's just shocking. A unit of boys is going to blow through a unit of battle sisters. A unit of boys is going to blow through a unit of Necron warriors. A unit of beast snaggers is going to cripple them. A unit of beast snaggers is going to cripple basically anything that's not a Terminator body or more. And that is just a basic battle line unit. So we actually have the best battle line troops, I think, in the entire game right now. There is an argument for maybe some like strike squads for Grey Knights. Those are actually really solid for being battle line. But for the cost, oh my gosh, boys and beast snags are absolutely amazing. And then when we get into really our elite infantry, not just infantry, we can start talking about our things like our knobs, our flashkits, who have the ability to actually put a hurting on you and shooting, and then go into melee and just trade up really high for the points value. But our knobs, oh my gosh, a fully stacked unit of 10 knobs led by a war boss is going to be 49 power claw attacks. You put it in Warhorde, they're exploding on 6s. You spend 1 CP to make them explode on 5s. You put Gaz on the table, and suddenly they're exploding and lethal on 5s. It is truly madness how hard a unit of our knobs can hit for the relative point cost. Even our mega knobs, which just took a huge nerf, don't get me wrong, in the form of points and rules, which, please, GW, you need to at least reverse the points nerf if you're going to keep that rules nerf. You can't have both. It's too much. But anyway, I'm getting off track again. So we have lots of options for dealing with elite infantry. We have Def Coppers with lots of twin-linked rocket launches. We have honestly kilocons. If you're playing in a dread mob style, they can be really, really good. If you're playing dread mob, the shooting from your Gorkanaut or your Morkanaut becomes actually very anti-elite infantry. So we have a myriad of ways to handle those things. Then we have a very high number of units. It is easy to get 18 to 19 units in your army. When you have this many units, you are not struggling to get through all of the actions that have to be done. It is very simple just to put an army that has 3 units of Storm Boys in it, 3 units of Gretchen in it, 3 trucks in it. That is 9 dedicated action monkeys, and you haven't really spent any points yet. You spent like maybe 300 points for your army. It's stupid how many troops that we have in the army, and it is a massive, massive strength. That kind of wraps up into the next one where I said scoring is very nice. We score exceptionally well, and this is basically the combination of 3 factors, okay? One, the combination is that we have that go turn with the waaagh, which can allow us to kill what needs to be killed when it needs to be killed. We have extremely high OC, which allows us to steal primary like it's no one's business. We might not hold primary exceptionally well, but we steal it very, very well. And then we have the ability to basically get any action or be in any position that we need to in order to score things like behind enemy lines, engage in all fronts, all these things. We also have characters that can help with this, and we've got some very, very unique characters. Take Snickrot, for example. His ability just to teleport once per game, well, it's incredible. It's super, super strong. And then after all of that, yes, we have insane stratagems. So orcs still have some of the best stratagems in the entire game. I hear oftentimes where people are talking to me about, oh, the stratagems really, really are not that great. Well, listen to the combo. The combo is very, very simple. I'm going to get my orc war boss and his 10 knobs out of the truck, because next turn I know I'm going to waaagh. And yeah, I know that's a little bit of annoying. GW just came out and said that the war boss doesn't get his bonus attacks if he starts the waaagh turn embarked in a truck. It's a little frustrating. I know. Sorry. Take it up with GW. Write your local mayor. I support this. But anyway, so you disembark them the turn before the waaagh. Then, when it is your waaagh turn, you yell waaagh very, very loud, unless you're at one of those silly tournaments who doesn't allow you to yell waaagh, in which case you hand your business card, which I'm going to get business cards made up. I'm going to do it. And that says waaagh on it. And then you spend 2 CP for here we go on your war boss with knobs. And then you stack it with the fact that you probably have Follow Me Lads, the enhancement on that unit. So that unit is now going to be +2 to move. It's going to be +2 to advance with advance and charge. And then it's going to be +2 to charge. So you're effectively getting a bonus 6 on top of whatever your advance and your charge roll is. It is shocking how fast orcs can be when it is time to do it. If you're not playing Warhorde and say you're playing The Big Hunt, you always have to be careful when you say that name. You have access to advance and charge outside of the waaagh. This is very big deal, and it can really screw up your opponents, especially when you stack it on units like, oh, I don't know, your Glory Hog Squig Hog unit that gets the 9-inch scout move it. So then you have a unit of hogs that get to scout 9, and then they get to move 10. You can advance them turn 1 and charge them into the prey unit. It is shocking just how dang fast orcs can be in a multitude of detachments. So that is a really, really big deal, and it really comes down to just how freaking good our strats are. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about how optimizing our strengths. I know I started doing it already, but that's just because I got excited. So what we did is we're going to consult our natural orc wisdom. We got to consult the orc oracle, and we got to figure out, oh dear orc oracle, how do we maximize our waaagh potential? So I got a little cartoon here for you. You got you got like the little space marine there. He's a little upset. He is yelling a dirty word. He says, "This is bullshit. How did your Gaz take my entire freaking unit?" And the orc sage thinks, and he considers deep in thought, and he says, Daka? It's marvelous. Someone commented on my video yesterday, and it was one of my favorite comments ever. He said, I don't think it was his quote, but he said the quote, and it just made me laugh really hard. He says, you're fucked when the barbarian can read. And that's how I feel about our channel, because we want all of you beautiful orc barbarians out there to learn how to read. So we can barbarian, but we can do it cunningly. Excuse my language. I normally don't curse on this channel. I just thought that was very, very funny. So then how are we going to really be optimizing our strengths? Well, number one, it's always the number one place for us to optimize our strengths is going to be in the list building step. And if you haven't really gone through like hardcore like list building tutorials, then you either need to book a coaching call, you need to hop in the Discord, ask for some help, or you need to go you need to go watch my videos on list building, because list building is really where you create your entire game plan. I cannot tell you how many people just make a list with random units that they think look cool, but there's no synergy, there's no plan on how the list actually operates. So if you need help with that, feel free to book a coaching call. My link is on Ko-Fi, which you can find in the description down below, which is where we can go through all those things and get you all set and ready. But in your list building step, what you want to do is you want to build a plan, and you want to build a plan for a multitude of scenarios. So for example, when I take a unit of Deffkoptas, what does that unit of Deffkoptas do for me? Well, that unit of Deffkoptas gives me anti-elite shooting, because it's really frustrating when you're playing a Custodes player and you shoot a unit of 3 Deffkoptas and they pick up 2 to 3 Custodes in shooting, because it's twin-linked rocket launchers at AP2 and it's got blast on it. It is a annoying thing for them to have to deal with. So they give me some anti-elite infantry. Well, they also give me some really good anti-chaff, right? Because when they charge, they're going to be getting, 5 attacks or 6 attacks each, and it's going to be exploding on 6s if I'm playing Warhorde. That is all at strength 5 or strength 6, depending on if you're on the wall turn, of course. And that is enough to clear basically any of your chaff units, whether it's guardsmen, whether it's just basic Eldar, all bodies, or whatever. So they give me anti-elite infantry. They give me anti-chaff. They also give me speed. They're also give me a fairly tough body for the points cost. I'm not saying they're tough, but if for 100 points, they get a 4-up armor save, they get a T6, 4 wounds each. They can drop behind enemy lines, say score a deploy, a locust or new deploy Templar Hummers. I always forget. It's established locust. That's the one. And then give me 4 victory points for that. And when my opponent tries to kill them on this in their turn, they're going to have to dedicate more than just bolter fire, because bolter fire will not make it through them. So they're going to have to give me more than bolter fire, which is a big issue for the enemies when they're trying to prioritize what they have to deal with in a turn. So they act as a distraction, they act as a scorer, they act as an anti-elite killer. So that's what I'm talking about when you're going into list building. You take your units and you build them to do multiple things. Whenever you take a truck with, say, a unit of knobs, well, think of it this way. That truck's job is a screener. It screens to stop like rapid ingresses, deep strikes, things like that. It's also going to hold your primary. It's also going to be doing all of your actions. And then if you're going into like a tougher unit and you need to get a few wounds through, it can act as a tank shock supplier. So it gives you lots of different options. So you have to think about all of the units in your list as serving multiple roles. Cool. MSU is very, very easy to achieve. And this is kind of the thing that we were talking about when on the previous slide, when I was saying, all right, it's very simple for us to get to the 18 to 19 unit marks. A truck. 3 units of Storm Boys, Snickrot. These guys are going to go do tons of actions. You've got 3 units of Gretchen. I've got 1 sitting in my home field. 2 are going to be strat reserving into different positions just to do random things. Honestly, a lot of times I'll strat reserve a unit of Gretchen and I'll rapid ingress them and I'll stretch them out all the way just to stop my opponent from being able to ever deep strike, or maybe I'll deep strike them. I wouldn't rapid ingress them. Sorry. I would deep strike them to stop my opponent from being able to rapid ingress into places where I don't want them to rapid ingress, because that's a 40-point unit that can just basically block an entire third of the table for my opponent. So it's really interesting what you can do when you have this many units. So MSU gets very easy to accomplish with orcs. Then our beast snags and our boys, like we were talking about, they are the best battle line troops in the freaking game right now with a base T5. They went up to that 5-up armor save, which is actually really nice because when you're in cover, now you have basically a 4-up all over the place. They slap in melee. So if I'm putting Beast Snag a unit of Beast Snagga boys, especially when they're led by like a Beast Boss, they become very anti-tank. But without the Beast Boss, they're still very anti-infantry. They're serving multiple roles with an extremely high OC. My normal boys are going to be stickying objectives. And if anyone's ever played against Green Tide, you know the pain of an orc player just high rolling those 2 stupid rocket launches. And you're like, Did your orc boy blob just kill 5 of my Space Marines? Yep. Because they high rolled on the rocket launches. Because blast is a thing, right? So that's what I'm saying. We have really, really good battle line units, and they really help you carry the game. Staging is critical. So this is one of the things that we have to understand when we're playing orcs. We are not tough. And we went over this in the last video where we're squishy. It's easy to kill the orcs. But the game plan that we have to make to really maximize on all of our strengths, which is our speed, our hard-hitting power, our primary denial, right? All of these things, you have to stage your units. If you don't know what I mean by staging, you need to go back and watch my video on staging for melee units. I think I'll see if I can link that at the end of this video. But if you haven't found it, it's really easy. I think it's called I Solve Staging for You, or Staging for, or the number 1 skill melee armies need, something like that. But I'll see if I can just link it down to make it easier for you. You have to stage your troops. You have to be set up for the next turn or the next 2 turns, depending on what your opponent does. This is where the orc cunning comes into place. Then the last one here, your go turn. This is controversial, okay? Your go turn or your waaagh turn should be a threat. It doesn't have to be a knockout punch. Now, I know this might be a little counterintuitive to what a lot of people are thinking, but I do not need to cause critical damage to my opponent in my waaagh turn. I've won many games where I didn't kill anything but beyond like a unit of like scouts or something in a waaagh turn, and I just won. And here's how, okay? My opponent knows I have a waaagh, and they know I have to declare it at the beginning of a battle round. So they get to decide when I waaagh. So the onus is on my opponent to set me up in a position where I'm forced to waaagh, or basically just lose the game. But if I don't let them do that to me, if I have myself staged, if I have my safe objectives, I've got secondaries that are being accomplished, and my opponent is not in a position to really force me to use my waaagh, I can just say, no, I'm not going to waaagh. Which means next turn, my opponent has to be very concerned about my waaagh. That is a problem. That is a huge freaking problem. It works a lot better when you go first as orcs. That threat doesn't work nearly as well when we go second, but it works really, really well when you go first. So a lot of times what I like to use is my waaagh as a threat. Now, if I see the knockout punch, I'm going to take it. I'm going to throw the overhand, right? I'm going to go Dan Hendo, right? I'm going to go for it. But I don't have to. I can just use it as a psychological warfare tool that my opponent is terrified of. The worst thing in existence to happen is when you're playing a game and you declare, "Wah!" when you want to, and your opponent says, "Cool," and they just back up 10 inches. And your waaagh turn is wasted, and then the next turn, they just come forward and just wipe you. So I don't ever allow that to happen to me. Instead, it can be turn 3 and I haven't used my waaagh, and my opponent's like, crap. I've held my waaagh until turn 4. I've never lost a game in my life when I've held my waaagh till turn 4. I have not lost a single game where I held it until turn 4. Now that is crazy, right? Now, I've lost games, like in 9th edition, because when I didn't call waaagh, but that's just because they killed my warlord early, things like that. So, but when the plan is to not call it till 1-4, then it generally just wins. So generally, the later you can call the waaagh is the more successful the game that you will have as it works. So really, I want you to consider that. Okay, I want you to consider using your waaagh as a threat to your opponent, not necessarily the knockout punch. Of course, if your opponent gives you the knockout punch, take it. Absolutely. So guys, these are our strengths as orcs, and these are how I highly, highly recommend that you utilize them to increase the Krump ability of your own personal waaagh. I'm going to be back next week, and I'm going to start doing a little series. The first one is actually going to be titled, Gazkulmakar Thraka. Is he necessary? Because there are a lot of units in our game, in our army, that I find a lot of like popular players are out there saying, oh, you have to take this unit because it's so good. It's like, but is it necessary? I'll give you my thoughts on it. And we'll do a little deep dive there, and we'll get you all crumping with the best of them. Until next time, happy crumping, my wargamers, and I'll see you next week. Bye.